Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second workshop of the Academic Job Workshop Series organized by Plant Postdocs. My name is Ariadna González Solís. I am an NSF postdoctoral fellow at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And before starting with today's workshop, I'm going to take some time to introduce our group. So Plant Postdoc started in 2019 with the main goal of sharing opportunities and resources for postdocs in plant science-related fields to help each other in the job application process in academia and in industry. So really, we're very excited having this workshop series this time, and I'm just gonna show some of the resources we have in Plant Postdoc. So you can find us in different social media platforms. We also have a YouTube channel, in which all the workshop of this series would be uploaded there, so you can find them there, together with all our previous webinars and different other resources. We also have the potential plant peer review database, where you can volunteer to peer review. And this list is shared with editors of plant science-related journals. So this is a really good opportunity for early career scientists to gain experience as reviewers. So if you have any questions, you can always contact us in our Gmail account. Is here in this slide. And also please visit our website for more information. I really want to thank Sunil and Arif, who are the Plant Postdoc founders, so since 2019, and they have been really like the working force to get this workshop series out. So really a big thanks. And also all the work done in Plant Postdoc is possible thanks to this big group. So we have a leadership team of postdocs and scientists from different universities across the globe. We also want to thank our past members who did a lot of work to get all these resources for Plant Postdocs. And also big thanks to our advisory board, which faculty members from different institutions and also members of industry. So really, really a big thanks to all of them and all their advice. And again, today we're very excited to have our second of 4 workshops in this series. Today we're going to be talking about the cover letter specifically, but I also want to remind everyone that we will have the teaching and the diversity statement coming. We will take a break next week and we will restart. So the next workshop is in October 12th. And also there's a time change. So for that one, we're going to be doing at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And so, yeah. So also remember that in order to attend this workshop, you have to register individually for each one so that you can get the Zoom link to access the workshop live. And also together with this workshop series, we're very excited to have this Sahyadri Outstanding Plant Postdoc Award. So if you are a current postdoctoral scientist in plant science related fields and you are preparing to apply for USA academic faculty position, this is a great opportunity we have. So the deadline is coming up. So if you have any questions, please contact us. Here is listed the eligibility and the selection criteria, but always feel free to contact us if you have any questions. And with that, I will now introduce our speaker for today. He is Aman Husbands. Aman got his Bachelor's of Science from the University of Toronto and then pursued a PhD in Patricia Springer's lab at the University of California, Riverside, where he showed that the love domain plant-specific transcription factors regulate numerous developmental processes, including racinosteroid signaling, adaxial-avaxial polarity, and lateral root production. After receiving his PhD, Aman joined the Timmermans lab at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in New York, where he studied the molecular mechanisms that drive the production of flat leaf architecture. In January of 2018, Aman started his own lab at Ohio State and recently moved to University of Pennsylvania, joining the Department of Biology in January of 2022. And with that, please, Aman, we are very interested to see what you have to share with us today.
That's great. Thank you, Ariadna. Thank you, Arif and Sunil as well. I really love Plant Postdocs. It's a good group. I've been speaking since 2021, so I'll keep inviting me. I have an easy job today, I think. I think the cover letter is probably the easiest one of all of these to do. There's a sort of nice format that works. Did you guys send out the letter that I gave, or will we do it afterwards?
We will be doing that. We will be posting all the materials after the workshop.
So you'll get a copy of that letter. But I thought what we could do is just basically sort of walk through that and just point out the key elements. The other thing I wanted to show you was my my list of 20-something individual places that I applied to. Right, this is it's a tough process. Right, I totally understand how that feeling of uncertainty and, you know, how does this all work? Will I ever get a job? You know, I sent 24 different applications out. I heard, you know, a lot of them in yellow were just sort of like, no, thank you. I got 3 invitations to speak to come on campus, which was amazing. One of them said no, so I put it in black. And 2 of them, you know, said yes. So there's definitely a light at the end of that tunnel. And what I did is I just created a list with what's the department, what's the title, and then the preferred area of focus, right? So what do they think they're looking for in a candidate, right? That was important. Research plan, what length do they want? What teaching statement length do they want? Do they want a diversity statement? So you just sort of lay out your list of things to do. The decision of whether or not to apply for a job is tricky, right? Because these job ads can really vary tremendously. So some of them are really broad on purpose to cast a really wide net. So for example, my department now is advertising for a tenure track position in ecology, right? The rank of assistant professor. And I know from being in the room that we are looking for somebody who will be actually truly open about who comes, as long as it's in this field of ecology. But, you know, some of the things that we're interested in would be resilience, sustainability, adaptation. So in other words, climate change is coming. You know, we want to think about climate change from an ecologist perspective. Areas of interest to include, but are not limited to, that is really key language: population and community responses, ecology, adaptation. So there are sort of certain things that we are particularly interested in, but absolutely, if you are outside of that area, you should still apply, right? You never know. So for example, somebody who's in that area might apply and we don't like it. Whereas you have applied, you're in a different area, but you're a really attractive, awesome candidate. And then, you know, you end up getting the job, even though you feel like you don't exactly fit what our priority areas are. So broad ads like this are interesting, right? And we emphasize these areas only and encourage applicants from all candidates working in ecology. So in other words, we're just saying, hey, this would be nice. We're not saying it has to be this. So you want to really look for language like that. Then there's other ads that are incredibly tailored, right? You really feel like they're writing this for like one person. So those are much harder. And when I applied to positions like that, I basically didn't hear anything back, right? I got most of my traction from ads that were sort of broad and people that were thinking, yeah, sort of more open about what the research would be. Okay, so that's sort of, it's tough to know the answer to that, whether to apply or not. My gut is in general is for you to apply, right? I think the actual work to apply once you have your package together is not that hard. And ironically, the cover letter is the place where you would do those sort of tweaks and tailoring. Okay. So this is the cover letter that I'm going to send around, and it's basically divided just into a few sections. So this is the one I sent to Ohio State. So my first one, the first thing is basically, you know, one sentence about who you are. I'm a developmental biologist. I'm studying a complex network of cell-fate determinants, and then you get straight into synergy. So right away, this is basically saying, I have read your job ad. I've been to your website. I've looked up all these people. I think this department is really great for me. And here's why, right? So I found, the research areas of Eric Rodewald and Helen Chamberlain really are a lot like mine, right? Because of the type of research that I'm interested in. I could also interact with Craig Berg, who works with nuclear receptors. I love transcription factors. I can see a lot of opportunities for collaboration. Our departments are very much looking for intra-department collaborations. And the idea that I could relate to people that I've taken, you know, 5 minutes to look at the website and see that there are people here that I could see myself, it really goes actually, I think, a long way, right? So that's really the first one. The first one is very much tailored to the given department. And then every other one actually can be sort of generic, right? This is the first important part here. Okay, what else did I want to say about that? Yes, good. So this is going to be a department specific thing, and it shows that you're really interested in collaboration and shows that you've taken the time to look at these particular people. Then I get into what have I done? All right. So basically, I'm interested in, my case is developmental robustness. Like, why is development so reproducible? It should go wrong all the time, but it doesn't. So that's my interesting question. And then what I did in my postdoc, right? I found new insights into the core of this network involved in leaf flatness, right? So I'm very much the right person to look at this. Here's a bit of what I've done in the past. And then your next thing is, where do I want to go in the future? Right. So this is what I've done in my postdoc and the types of questions that I'm interested in. And then here's basically where I'm going to go next with that. So I'm gonna resolve fundamental questions about mechanisms that do this, right? Here are some of my questions that are involved in this. Why would that be interesting? Well, if I could engineer robustness into other things, that might be really helpful for things like climate change, right? This will get people excited then about your research and the scope. So on basically one page, you can see why I like your department, why it's great for me. Here's the type of stuff that I've done in the postdoc and the type of questions that I'm interested in. And here's where I want to go next, and why that indeed could be valuable. And then all of the other details are going to be laid out in the research plan, and more information about you will be found in the CV. But that cover letter is just a chance to basically personalize it by talking specifically about their department. And then I talked to some colleagues here who are on a search committee now. I asked them, like, what do you look for in a cover letter? Like, do you even read them? Some people said no, right? And other people said yes. What's nice about it is it's a chance for you to put a personal touch on the application. So for example, as a graduate of a small college, the idea of me coming back to teach at a small college is very appealing, something like that, right? So this shows that you're not just randomly applying, but there's something specific about this place that you find appealing, right? Maybe, this was my hometown, right? Or I'm from the area, and the idea of being able to be back here would be really very attractive. What that does is it signals to them that you are, serious about taking this job, right? A job search is a real pain, and these jobs search often fail. So you spent all this time and energy to read applications and do this, and now you don't have a candidate, right? So on our side, we really want to make sure that this person, that somebody good ends up taking this job. That's very much what we're thinking. And if you can put in the cover letter that you have a sort of personal connection somehow, that signals to us then that there's a higher likelihood that you would take this job if it's the right fit for both sides, right? So that's one thing you can then do with that. You could also address other things. Maybe you were in industry for a while and are now coming back to academia, so you're sort of maybe a non-standard applicant. The cover letter is an excellent chance to sort of bring that up and to discuss that in a personal way. So that's really what it does. I think a cover letter gives you a slightly more personal angle on the information that's going to be in your CV and in your research statement, which is much more sort of factual. Right. So those are basically it. That's what I mean. It's actually not rocket science to do a good cover letter. So once you have 2/3 of that can be reused, put it on cover, put it on letterhead, have your address, dates. I mean, these are sort of standard things. And that's really about it. And I can share this letter with you, and then I would basically just use that as a template. And then, insert your stuff somewhere, and then you end up, and then, if you want to include an additional paragraph that's much more personal, if you feel that that's appropriate for the department that you're applying, I think that's a great idea too. Yeah, so I'm happy to take sort of more specific questions about this as well, or clarify anything that is not clear.
Okay, thank you so much, Aman. So yeah, now if you have any questions, if you want to start putting them in the chat, and also thank you to everyone who already submitted some questions in the registration. So I'm going to start with some of those. So first, how to address if you have done your PhD and your postdoc in an institution outside the US, and now you are specifically applying to a position in the US. Is that something you need to cover somehow specifically in the cover letter, or what are your suggestions?
I don't see it that way. I see it as a, you could describe where you came from, but I don't see that as a sort of net negative that you did your PhD and postdoc outside of the US at all. I don't think we would hold that against people. This is in the CV, it's in the research statement of what you're trying to do next. So all of that information is available. I would rather say if you've had a sort of non-standard path, maybe you were went to industry for 5 years, that's something where you could bring that up. But I think the idea of being in an institution that's outside the US as a net negative that needs to be sort of corrected, I don't think we see it that way.
Thank you. Yeah, talking a little bit more about this change probably in career paths that you were already mentioning. Maybe you have some industry experience and now maybe, yeah, you're changing back to academia. What about also when you have like two very different research fields? How do you address that also? Or should you address that in the cover letter?
Yeah, it's true. That is challenging. That's very much a research statement question too, right? That has to be included in there too. What you want to do next has to incorporate what you've done and also where you're trying to go next. So that's a real challenge to create this sort of umbrella. If you have very different research areas, I see that actually as a strength, right? If you were able to be successful in two different research areas, this is great, and that could go in your section, in the second section where you're talking about, what you're interested in doing and how what you've done relates to that. So if you do want to put it in the cover letter, you can say, I've approached this sort of broad idea from two different perspectives, for example, right? So you could come at that molecularly and more sort of morphologically or something. I don't know, I'm giving an example. But you could certainly find a way to weave that together and to have that be a strength, right? That you are capable of looking at research from multiple perspectives and succeeding. And hopefully your future research will incorporate both of those ideas, right? Everything you've done before, you want that to count going forward. So that's a good way to do it. I think that's probably better woven into the research statement, but indeed, for me, that's a strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And you already mentioned a little bit about how maybe including in your first paragraph how this position, how the applicant fits into this institution, and maybe in your third paragraph more of what's your future directions. Should the applicant at some point mention the potential collaborators? Like if you already have, like ideas to collaborate with someone in that department or not, should that be included?
Yes, absolutely, for multiple reasons. First, I mean, it shows that you have taken the time to go to that website and look up the department. That's a sort of bare minimum, right? But that you've chosen them not because you need a job, but because this particular department could be a great fit for you, right? That you can see your science getting better and that you could improve the science of the people that you're going to, right? If you are an expert in something and you see that the department is lacking that, you can come and say, like, for example, the type of work I do would fit really well with this person and this person, and might make their science better. Here's the type of thing that I can bring. So I think that's huge. People would want to bring in somebody with a new technique or new approach that would benefit them, that would help their research. That's a huge win. So that's a couple things. The other thing too is by putting their name on there, it makes it more likely that the search committee could send it to them to evaluate your package, right? So if there's somebody there who is an advocate for you, or at the very least maybe is in your area and would understand what you're doing, that's great. Now you have somebody who would understand what your work is, evaluating your research statement, as opposed to like, yeah, I don't really know this, it doesn't really excite me, and then you move on, right? So the idea that you're getting it in the hands of people that would understand your work and be excited by it, that's another benefit to putting specific names of people into there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, great. For research position with teaching requirements, is it helpful to put a paragraph for teaching and mentoring?
I've seen it both ways. I actually didn't. I sort of said, together with a strong commitment to teaching and diversity, this will continue to form the core of my academic philosophy. So I had this letter. This letter had to be 1 page, so I had to tighten it a little bit. I think I had maybe another sentence in there about teaching in the longer version. I have also seen people dedicate an entire paragraph to talking about teaching and mentoring. That's true, but this again for me is why you have the teaching statement, right? This is why you have a diversity statement. So I like the idea that these are separated out and that you spend more time on them individually. For me, the cover letter is much more kind of a summary idea, right? That, yeah, you have your potential collaborations and then what you're interested in, what you've done and what you want to do next. So they can see at a glance, essentially, where you're going. Like, this is basically the package that I'm going to be looking at. This is roughly the structure of that package. So I think that's better for the cover letter. And I'd rather spend more time in the teaching statement, really getting into my philosophy and how I plan to address that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have a follow-up on like that question about including the name of the collaborators. Because some people say that it's better to just broadly mention the groups you plan to collaborate rather than mentioning specific names, because this could somehow have, like some potential conflict.
Well,
Are there any ideas, any thoughts on that?
so like imagine someone on the search committee hates Eric, you know what I mean? And therefore they're going to throw my package in the garbage. It doesn't work like that, right? There may be stuff that's out of your control. So in this specific example, it's very funny. I went to Ohio State to interview, and Eric Rodewold, the first words he said to me when I got there were like, "I'm leaving to go to Michigan State University, so I won't be on this, but I wish you good luck." So, that there's so much here that is actually out of your control, right? There's so much happening that you don't know behind the scenes. And that actually goes for the whole process in general. I actually think the entire process, it seems weird and arbitrary sometimes because it is weird and arbitrary sometimes, right? You don't know what the politics are in the department, where they've had, 5 plant people in a row that get hired, and now maybe, it's really time for a Drosophila person to get hired. And even if you're an excellent plant biologist, and it's a broad search, yeah, that's not for you, but that's totally out of your control. There's nothing you can do about that, right? And whether there's personalities in the department that would be turned off by seeing somebody's name in your cover letter, you have no control over that either. I think on balance, it's better to be specific and to sort of say why you're interested in collaborating with this specific person as an example. And indeed, I said, I see many opportunities for synergistic interaction. For instance, right? And then I give a couple of examples, or another one with Craig. This doesn't mean they're the only people that I would be interested in, but it just shows that I have specifically looked at the department and thought about specific collaborations that could be good, rather than a sort of generic, I love people and I want to collaborate with people. Like, okay. So I favor, long story short, I favor putting the full name. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Another question. I have a pending patent application. If I mention in the cover letter is a good idea? That's a question from someone from the audience.
I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I wonder whether that's also better for the research statement. I mean, that'll be in the CV, that's for sure. It'll say patents. If that patent applies to the research, if that's going to be directly applicable to the research, that's probably a good place to do it. If you feel like you could weave it into this second paragraph here that talks about, a little bit about what you've done. I mean, if you feel that it's appropriate to put it in there. I'm not sure how to do that. I think that this you want to be as broad as you can. What are the big ideas? The big ideas need to come across, and the fact that you have already made contributions towards those and that you will continue to do so. I think that is a much better use of the space. Clean, clear. What are my ideas? How will I get there? And then the patent they will see in the CV, and you can mention it in the research statement perhaps as well. Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Yeah.
Thank you. And talking about the space, usually for the cover letter, the page limit is not mentioned, but mostly what we see is 1 page.
Yeah.
What are the standard things to do?
I see a page. I've seen a page and 1 page and a quarter. You go over a little bit. That's okay. I think if you stick to that sort of 3-paragraph format, that idea of your department, what you've done, and where you want to go next, and then something like this, that's okay. I think about a page should basically be enough to get that across. Yeah, and I went over a little bit. You can see my signature is on the next page. Yeah, that's enough. And most of the letters I see are 1 page or slightly more.
Okay. Yeah. How crucial is the cover letter for the initial screening and selection in the job application process?
Yeah, I actually think it's my feeling is that it's less important than research statement and CV. Unfortunately, I don't like, it depends on the search committee. There are search committees that just go straight to the CV because they feel that CV tells the whole story. I do not agree, obviously. The research statement I find very useful because that gets into what you've done and what you're planning next. I can see your ideas and what you're thinking. So I love the research statement. I like to go straight for research statement, actually. The cover letter is not going to make you, but it may break you. If it's sloppy and generic and shows that you didn't really care, it could end up dinging you a little bit. I would say it's probably not the most important of these workshops that you're doing, not to minimize me. But yeah, that research statement and has to really pop. Yeah.
Okay, another question from someone from the audience. Could you describe more in detail what you think is an effective future research section in a cover letter? For example, should we reference resources in the department we would use or other specifics?
So I did not, but I can see that actually being valuable. Absolutely. So I think that cover letter would want to have the big ideas come through and why it would be valuable. So I basically gave a couple of examples of what I consider to be fundamental questions in the field. I then said why that would be useful, like to engineer robustness would be awesome, and it could have impacts on climate change, so you should care about it. So I kept that much more high level rather than say what sort of specifics could be done here. You know, having said that, this part here where you're talking about collaborations, yeah, I could see something like that fitting there, right? That here's the people that I could work with, and you know the types of infrastructure that you have there is going to be really useful for my research program as well. That it's basically two of us together, but weaving in a whole bunch of specifics in that cover letter, I think will miss the big idea. You just want to get people interested, show that it's personal, and get people interested and show them the sort of flow of where it's going, and then spend time in that research statement doing that, right? That your institution is going to be excellent for this, given the documented expertise in mass spectrometry that you have, that sort of thing, right? So I think that's probably, again, better done in the research statement.
Okay, one question that we get a lot is what are the common mistakes usually applicants do while writing their cover letter?
Yeah, if it's generic, you know, to whom it may concern sort of level, you really want to, I mean, if this letter could have been sent to any institution, that's a bad thing, right? This cover letter needs to really feel like I wrote this because there's something about Ohio State that I really like and that I want to get there. I've looked at the department and I would be delighted to work with this group of people. So that personal element absolutely has to come through, right? I would say that's the strongest point of that cover letter. If you can also make your big ideas pop, right? If you can make your number 2 and number 3 paragraph really clear, like where they get excited about the ideas that you're interested in, that you're asking, that's also a huge win. And this is actually why I'm so kind of anti-detail, is that I feel that details can sometimes bog down the message. I'm not saying they should be there in research statement, that for sure, but especially in something like a cover letter where someone's just sort of breezing through there, they're going to look for keywords that would be in robustness, climate change, right? The other reason I put climate change is when we looked at the job ad for Ohio State, fundamental aspects of plant responses and adaptation to climate change. So I looked at what they were looking for and made sure that somewhere in my cover letter, I'm talking a bit about these things, right? Plant growth and development in response to global change. So I'm a developmental biologist who works with plants, and I put climate change in there, right? I don't do anything with salt, drought, microbes, any of that, right? But when you look at their area of focus, you know, I was able to say enough of those words in that cover letter for that to really be an accurate reflection of what I plan to do, but also get their interest, right? So I think, and that's really simple to do, right? I did not have a whole bunch of details. I just talked about as climate change increases variability, crops are experiencing suboptimal conditions, right? So that's why what I'm doing could be of interest, and that's why it fits into your area of focus. Right.
One more question. What are the priority points to be covered in the cover letter? Just that's what you've been describing, kind of like a summary of the priority points.
Yeah. Basically, it's the 3 paragraphs, right? The number 1, which is personal for the department, right? Why your department, and why I might be good for you. What's my question, and what have I done to show you that I can answer that question, right? So it's a bit of what I did in the postdoc, and then where do I want to go next, right? What's my big sort of vision? What are the large, high level ideas that I'm interested in that I want to tackle? And then a more detailed outlay of my research accomplishments can be found in my attached plan, right? But that's it. So it's personal, what your questions and what you've done, and where you want to go next. I would say those are the 3 priority points. Yeah. It's not rocket science, I would say. So if you take this sort of 1, 2, 3 as a format and just see how you can do it, that's it. Just make sure that those ideas really pop, right? That the science that you're interested in comes through, the big questions. That's the hard part to me. Like the research statement was so difficult because the research question is so difficult. Like we're, as postdocs, we're very used to like at the bench, you know what I mean? Like I could tell you the salt concentration of stuff, but now when you're thinking as a PI, you have to think about a question that's so big that the way I say it is it's so big that 3 different research groups could each submit a grant on that question, right? That big question could fund multiple different labs working on different aspects. That is a big question, right? So that's how far back you need to step from your science to do that. And if the sort of big idea comes through in the cover letter, yeah, then it'll come through in the beginning of the research statement as well before you get into specifics. But that is the hard part, is to know what you want to do. It's tough. I remember that. I drove back and forth from Cold Spring Harbor for a year thinking about like, what do I actually want to do? Like that is a really hard question.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And one more question is how to tailor cover letters for each job application or make it more usable for multiple.
Well, like I said, so the second and third did never changed, right? The second and third didn't change. I think you know, the Ohio State ad liked climate change, but everybody likes climate change. So this actually is quite broad as well. The second one doesn't change either, right? My question is my question. What I've done in my postdoc isn't going to change. Really, the one that's going to change is that first one, right? Who am I? And the fact that I see many opportunities for interactions, and then you talk about them, and you'll know that from looking at that department website and really looking at their research. You know, look up a couple papers for the people, see what you think. Right? Convince them in this first paragraph that you have written this application for them, that department.
So now going back, you are showing us here your cover letter for your application to Ohio State. What would you do differently if you would have to write a cover letter now? Is there something that reading it now that you think like, oh, you know,
like cringe? Ironically, no, not really. I mean, I got the job at Ohio State, which is great. So I think it hits most of the high notes pretty well. I mean, some of the stuff is a bit pie in the sky, you know what I mean? Like yeah, the idea that I could sort of solve this fundamental question of developmental reproducibility, you know, this is like Conrad Waddington in the 40s has been working on thinking about this. So it's a very big idea, which is what it should be. But it is, I read it over and it's kind of like, yeah, we'll see. But I wouldn't do it differently. You know, you want to get them excited in your research question, and then your research statement sort of gets into specific ways that you could start to take bites of that question, right? Yeah. No, I thought it was okay.
You think it's okay? You would still leave it as it is and maybe change. So
yeah.
One more question. Do you think it's a good idea to mention in the cover letter about achievements, journal names, and publications and conferences?
Oh, wait. All details. That's all in the CV, and it's going to come across a little braggy, I think. It's sort of better to get people interested in your big question, and then they can go to the CV. If you do have excellent publications, I promise you, every search committee looks at publications in CV, every single one. So they will notice that. And in the research statement, you can emphasize that too. If you got a Nature paper, that's awesome. Maybe, but then, you know, and you would say recently published in Nature, you know, you can do it in other ways. The cover letter to me is about them. It's personal. I really love your department. You guys are great. Here's a little bit about me. Here's a little bit about what I want to do next.
Okay. I guess that same applies for preprints, right? That's the same thing, preprints.
Yeah, put them in there. I mean, definitely put them in the CV, but yes, everybody will look at the CV. Everybody will look at publications. And if you have any funding, if you're an NSF PRFB, like some people, you know, that always looks really good. So we are looking for things like that, but that would not go missed.
Okay, one more question about, here we have a question about, do you also tell your research statement or mostly the cover letter? You know, like for the position.
No, I never actually did. I made a 5-page version and a 3-page version. And then I always led with the 5-page version. And then somewhere along the line, I'm kind of like, I think people would be okay with 3 pages. People would like to read less as long as you can get the ideas across. And then I ended up using mostly the 3-page versions, including for the jobs that I was offered. So in reality, you don't need to do much with this package once you have it, right? Your teaching statement is going to be the same. So they'll probably talk about that, but you could tweak that a little. You could give a couple of examples of classes that you might be good at teaching. So there's some tweaks you could do, but in general, this is pretty, yeah, it's pretty much the same everywhere you go. I mean, if one school is incredibly well known for mass spec, you could sort of add a sentence in there saying, in this regard, Ohio State would be fantastic for my research, given your expertise in mass spectrometry. Something, you could say something like that, but minimal tailoring, I think, is needed at that stage. Yeah.
I think we're all wrapping up, so we're gonna do two questions more. And so one more, should we mention the course name I'm interested in teach if I join that specific department as part of the, if you're including a paragraph with your teaching opportunities, should you mention what are you interested in teaching, or that's also specifics?
Well, if you want, yeah, that does feel like specifics to me, yes. If you do want to have a paragraph, and I'm not saying no, I think it's okay if you want to have a paragraph on teaching and teaching and mentoring in the cover letter. I think that's okay. There it could just be 3 or 4 sentences. To get into specific class names, I don't know that it's necessary. I wouldn't say that that's a make or break. In your teaching statement, however, that is an excellent place to do that, right? To talk about that. But you could mention, yes, but you could totally have a paragraph on teaching and mentoring. Yeah, maybe that's one thing I could change. Maybe I would actually have added a teaching and mentoring paragraph now that I think about it. That's nice to do. maybe that'd be okay. Yeah, but yes, less details, the better here for me. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we already talked a little bit about tailoring the research statement for the position. What about the teaching statement?
Yeah, there too. That's a good idea. So your general philosophy is not going to change. Your plans going forward are not really going to change, but you could just sort of mention there, some places where I could see myself contributing are, this class and this class, given my expertise on something. So that's easy to do it. So look at a class list and change 1 or 2 sentences as you send it out to each school. I think that's doable.
Okay, so if there's anything else you would like to add to conclude this workshop, and in the meantime, I just want to remind everyone that we will be sharing some of the resources that Aman showed today, so that will be available soon. And also a reminder, we have our next workshop. It's going to be October 12th. So we have a break for next week, but we will be sharing the registration link for the next one. And yeah, if you want to say anything else to conclude.
So those are the sort of general structures. As personal in terms of the department, what your question is and what you did to go at that question and what you want to do next. Extra areas to consider would basically depend on you. Do you want a teaching and a mentoring statement? That's not necessarily a bad thing to add at all. And then is there anything sort of unique that you want to add about this particular position? If you come from a small college and you're going to a small college, right? To say that, like, as somebody who went to a small college, the idea of teaching there is really sort of important to me. If there, and there may not be, right? There can't be in everything. But if there is, that's a nice idea to put that as a sort of personal touch. Again, because that would signal to them that you know what this school is, you've thought about it, and that you actually would be likely to take that position if it was offered to you, because you have reasons, you have other, let's say, personal reasons to be attracted to this position in the first place. So teaching and mentoring and that personal aspect are sort of optional, and those are going to depend on the institution that you're applying to, I would say. But those other 3, that's going to be standard, right? Personal department, your research, what you want to do next.
Okay, and people from the audience really like your spreadsheet for navigating your search process. So just quickly to finish, do you have any, like any tips for navigating their search process?
Yeah, it's not easy. I know it's tough. And I just basically made this list just to keep myself sort of on it, right? What's the deadline? How long do they want the research plans for? How long is the teaching statement? Here's the link to it. So this, yeah, so it's this is also really nice too, the preferred area of focus. So if you did want to tweak, again, you don't have to, but if you did want to tweak that third paragraph about what you want to do next to make sure that you include certain words that are in here, this is a nice reminder to me to do that. Right. In reality, I didn't need to, but it's good to have that as a sort of option. Yeah. And then, I think yellow is what I heard back, and it was no, like as in no invitation. I got a Skype interview with Emory, but that didn't go anywhere. Then I got 3 invitations, and then Penn State told me no, so I made it all black. So, and then the other 2 were yes, and you just sort of follow this process. And I submitted 24 applications, and I know people that have submitted more than that. When in doubt, it just apply, right? Each one should be tailored, but once you have a strong set of documents that you're happy with, it does not take that long, right? That first paragraph means looking at the website, reading over what people do, thinking about what you could, who you could see yourself interacting with, and writing that out. I think in less than an hour, you could have a fully tailored application for each of these things. Probably less than that. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Aman, for all the research, sharing all your resources, and thank you everyone for joining today. So see you next time. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Aman.
Okay.